Welcome to Body Bags presented by the Kokomo Lantern. My name is Jeremy Geiger and I'm the co-owner of City of First Cremation and Funeral Services. Today I kind of want to talk to you about what we went through last week. It was pretty cool for us funeral directors here in the state of Indiana. We had our state funeral directors convention on Monday of last week. It started out with a memorial golf outing and it ran all the way through Thursday evening. Kim and I were only able to attend on Tuesday and Thursday. That way we were able to try to space out our families that we were serving at the time and give us an opportunity to head down there. But I just want to kind of go over some of this information with you guys because you probably wonder, what in the world do funeral directors talk about at convention? Is it all about death and dying and embalming? No, not really, but there are a lot of core hours that are devoted towards that time. So on the very first day for us on Tuesday, we started the session at 8:30 in the morning. Boy, that was fun getting up early and heading down there. It was myself, Kim Rose, and as you viewers remember, Erica Gilbertson. She went along with us. Since she was a student intern, she was able to go to convention and kind of experience that for the first time. But we started off our morning at 8:30 with Andy Clayton, former IFDA president. And IFDA stands for Indiana Funeral Directors Association. And he kind of covered some of the business aspects of IFDA, where the organization stands in memberships. They also facilitate a trust fund for us. It's called Master Choice Trust. It's a way to prearrange and secure your money through the funeral home. All of it was doing very well. Members are up, the money is in the green, and everybody seems to be pretty happy with everything. The other things on the business side session of it is we had the induction of our new president. It's Mr. Yoder Mr. Culp from up in Goshen, Indiana. He got sworn in and is taking over his duties beginning June 1st, which is pretty cool. And then there were some other board members that were sworn in as a group. It's not really exciting for me personally on that because we aren't currently a member of IFDA, and I know that our organization is very strong and viable, so I had no concerns of them telling us that there was doom and gloom for IFDA, because there's not. It's been a pretty good organization to be a part of. Outside of that, we had a lobbyist that come and talk to us. It was rather interesting in my perspective to hear this lobbyist talking about some of the laws that may be changing or that people are trying to have change. There may be some ideas of funeral homes not needing a license, or funeral homes just being a source of disposition and not really a funeral service center. Definitely your more traditional funeral homes, I feel that they're going to be panicking and be a little more mindful and watching those things pretty close. Here at City of First Cremation, it is something that we're concerned on the licensing of not necessarily needing a funeral director for dispositions or anything, but it is important that we're there for those funeral ceremonies as well, because we've done it many of times. We know how well it works when we do things particular ways. You see us work these things in the background and you just think that it's pretty easy. Believe me, it's not. It's taken a few years of practice and skill and learning from mentors to be able to pull that off. So after we got done with our business section, we took a little bit of a break. We got to have lunch. We got to walk through the trade floor. I'll talk about the trade floor in a future episode, so please continue to follow us here at the Kokomo Lantern on Body Bags episodes, so you can catch that information. Very cool things that we've seen if you are curious, so please stay tuned. The final, or not the final, the middle episode that we had for the session that day was Vernie Fountain. He came and talked to us about dealing with decomposition, how to control its odors, and another sad, tragic situation when a body may be exposed to a house fire or some type of thermal burns. I was pretty excited for this part of the session at convention. Vernie's been in our industry for many, many years. He has lots of experience. He works with local medical examiners in his area, and just very knowledgeable man. So we get into that class session, and he starts talking about the different phases of decomposition, and what we've kind of learned in mortuary school doesn't really line up to what maybe Vernie sees really in the field as what decomposition is. And he showed us various pictures of bodies from like a dry decomposition to full bloating, purging, to maybe just the early stages of decomposition where there's some skin slip and discoloration. So I was pretty excited to think he was going to teach us some awesome way to handle the odors and controlling that decomposition. I felt like I had a pretty good knowledge of this going to mortuary school in the cases that I've handled over the years. Never really had anything too terrible that I couldn't control, but some of these pictures that Vernie showed, I think that would have been a tough one to try to deal with and maintain the odor control. But it wasn't a very complex procedure that I was anticipating. There was no fancy chemical that was used or tool that we could purchase to use to help control these odors. He mentioned using an ozone machine. Ozone likes to attach and destroy the decomposition odors. So then he kind of went into treating the body. So he was bathing the body, even though the tissues were coming off of it. He popped blisters to try to get as much of the tissue relieved from any fluid that was built up. And he dried that body, and he got it placed onto a cotton blanket, per se. Maybe a couple of plastic disposable cotton hospital chucks. Maybe if you've seen those, you know what I'm talking about. And then he placed that body on there, and he took 6 bottles of cavity fluid, and he laid those out into the cotton so that the backside was touching some of that formaldehyde and cavity fluid, and then he poured some on top of the body along with some cotton. He talked about positioning the deceased so that way they don't continue to get contorted, because the gases do expand when you're going through decomp. So your arms aren't going to necessarily be down to your sides, your legs aren't going to be straight either. So he showed us ways to maybe position those to keep them from moving on us. And then he took some plastic that he bought at Home Depot. And this is where I kind of got disappointed on some of the things he was talking about, because I thought it would be something cooler. But he went to Home Depot and he bought kind of like visqueen or plastic that's kind of folded up on a big roll. And it usually unfolds into 6 or 8 feet wide. He cut the length of that plastic at about 18 feet in length, and he positioned it underneath the deceased after he opened it up, and then he kind of rolled them up as like a burrito at Chipotle, continually wrapping them. He said a minimum of 4 times, that we could go more. It's truly up to us, and truly really the amount of odor that we're trying to maybe contain and control would dictate maybe more rotations on that plastic. And then he taped that plastic visqueen up around them. He kind of started in the middle, and he said every 6 to 8 inches, you go out away from that center section, kind of pushing that air out, folding those ends up, and then taping those as well. He said that you could soak some cotton in some deodorizing chemicals and place that inside your pouch. He claims that this process will work for about 2 weeks, depending on the severity of the decomp. Sometimes it may be a little longer than that 2-week period if it's in the early stages of decomp. So I was kind of bummed there, and he kind of shared a horror story where he had somebody that was severe decomposition. The hand was really having skin slip issues, and they received this body from the coroner's office. They forgot to get their fingerprints at the coroner's office, so they called Vernie and said, hey, we need you to open that up so we can get in there and get these prints. So Vernie said that instead of unwrapping them, that you kind of split it down the top side, kind of like a hot dog bun, and then he was able to reach in, retrieve the hands, do the fingerprinting that was needed, and then he taped that back up, and then at least 4 more wraps of new plastic around there. So it wasn't quite as exciting as maybe as I was hoping to see this Class B, but it was definitely interesting to see the very advanced stages of decomp, learning that maybe we weren't really identifying the stages of decomposition as well as we should have been in mortuary school versus what we see in the real industry and field. So that class went for about 2 hours. Then we got another little break from there. And then the last class that we stuck around for, it was called 38 Minutes After the Death Call. We got to meet a gentleman who is working at a funeral home in Washington, D.C. The funeral home is called Groller's. Some of you folks may know the name of that mortuary because it's rather famous. Groller's Mortuary was selected to handle JFK's funeral services. And then they kind of snowballed into the mortuary and funeral service provider for most of our dignitaries and things of that nature. It was neat to hear him talk about 4 times a year, this special team kind of gets together. They fly in from all over the country and they meet and do mock funeral services. So they fly in Air Force One like it's actually receiving a deceased dignitary. They transport them to Groller's. They do a mock embalming. They take them to the rotunda and set them up. They take them to the cathedral as well and practice that ceremony. Not only do the team of funeral directors practice their procedures, they also have the other staff members that may drive the Sprinter vans for the family. So in the procession, those drivers are driving through DC as a mock funeral service, as if somebody truly died. The other individuals that are involved would be like your collar guard and your pallbearers. They have special caskets that they use. They add weight into them so they can practice carrying them and holding the casket at a certain level, going up the steps, coming back down the steps. They work on placing that casket onto the casket truck or bier. That's the device that the casket sits on so we can wheel them in and out of the church or wherever. They've got marks on the floor that you wouldn't even know were really there. So when they come in, they know they've hit their mark and they can set that casket right down perfectly onto that church truck. It was really exciting to kind of hear some of his stories about JFK. He was only 5 when the president passed away, so I was kind of bummed that he didn't maybe have firsthand knowledge working with the president's family, but he got to interview all those embalmers and funeral directors and staff members that were there supporting that family. And he has developed a book, and he shared some really, really neat case file documents with us, such as the casket purchase. He had some very private photographs of the president after the restorative process. He had pictures of the casket being dropped out into the ocean that was dropped and sunk, which was really neat to kind of see. I didn't realize that there was a faux pas with the casket and they had to dispose of it, and they sunk it into the ocean. The other neat thing was kind of these older generations that were around me and had more connection to JFK's death. They had really cool questions to ask him. Some of them were conspiracy related, and he wouldn't kind of go into those. Some of the other questions were more related to, like, what were the hours that these funeral directors experiencing on those days? Were they 8 to 10 hours? Were they more like 12 to 14 hours? They talked about where the embalmings were performed. Originally, they were going to do it at the morgue where JFK's body was, but then there was too many onlookers, so they took him out of there and went back to the funeral home. It was neat to hear that when the shooting occurred there in Texas, that the Texas coroner's office was trying to take custody, and it was neat to hear how the federal government stepped into place and said, "I'm sorry, your jurisdiction doesn't stick here. He's coming back with us to DC." So outside of the JFK thing, he shared with us some other funeral services that he was a part of. He did the Bush funeral, he did the Reagan funeral. So to kind of hear some of the intricacies of the family dynamics was really cool for us as funeral directors, to kind of get an insight of these more influential families, because we typically just deal with our normal community members. Yes, some of them may be prominent business owners or whatnot. Otherwise, you could just be a regular blue-collar worker. So not to discredit any of that, but it is definitely neat to see maybe the celebrity dignitary side of how funeral services are done. So that kind of wraps up what day one was for us. We had opportunities to kind of walk through that trade floor, and they did some silent auctions to raise money for the Isaac Ball Fellowship Foundation, which, if you're a funeral student and you've got an interest to try to get a scholarship, hit up IFDA. They've got opportunities for you to kind of get some money towards your schooling. But that kind of concluded our day there, and then we made our journey back to Kokomo. It was pretty uneventful for us Tuesday evening and Wednesday. We were able to kind of wrap up some paperwork that we needed to from the families over the weekend, and set us up for a really good day on Thursday. So I will talk to you about day 2 on the next episode. But this does conclude our services here at City of First Cremation and Funeral Services. Please like, follow, share, subscribe to the Kokomo Lantern Body Bags podcast. Once again, this is Jeremy. Thank you for all being here.